My name is Natalie Reed, and I was 36 years old when I woke up in a hospital bed and learned my mother had handed my body back to the man I escaped. Ryan was sitting beside me with my phone in his coat pocket and my wedding ring on the tray table, even though we had been divorced for almost 2 years. My mother stood behind him with her purse pressed to her stomach and whispered, "Do not get upset. He has been making the decisions." That was the first thing I understood after the accident. Not the tubes, not the bandage around my ribs, not the cast on my left wrist. The first thing I understood was that the person I trusted with my emergency folder had decided my safety mattered less than her dream of fixing my marriage. The folder was red, plastic, and plain. It had my medical directive, my hospital release limits, my insurance cards, and one sentence printed in bold across the first page. Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. My mother had seen that sentence. She had watched me write it. She had nodded while I cried in her kitchen and told her that if anything ever happened to me, Ryan could not be allowed back into the center of my life. Then the accident happened, and she called him before she called the woman whose name was actually on the form. Before we go further, I want you to remember the red folder, because my mother would later say she panicked. Ryan would later say he was only helping. My family would later say I was cruel for turning an emergency into a punishment. But paper has a way of staying calm when people rewrite themselves. That red folder told the truth before I was awake enough to speak. I grew up in Glen Haven, Virginia, in a brick ranch house with white shutters and a mailbox my father painted every spring. My father, Paul, was a quiet insurance adjuster who measured damage for a living and avoided it at home. My mother, Margot, taught 4th grade for 29 years and believed every problem could be solved if the right woman sacrificed first. She ran our home the way she ran her classroom. Clean counters, labeled bins, thank you notes mailed on time, and no emotional mess left where neighbors could see it. I was her only child, which meant I was both her project and her proof. When I got straight A's, she called it good raising. When I became a paralegal, she told people I was practical. When I married Ryan Pierce, she called it answered prayer. Ryan looked like the kind of man mothers wanted for their daughters. He wore pressed shirts. He remembered birthdays. He stood when older women came to the table. He had a deep voice, a steady handshake, and the gift of sounding reasonable while making you smaller. The first year of our marriage, he corrected me in private. The second year, he corrected me in front of friends. By the 4th year, he had opinions about my clothes, my clients, my bank password, my laugh, and how long I took to answer his texts. He never hit me. That is one of the traps people use to make you doubt yourself. He never hit me, so my mother said he was intense. He never hit me, so my father said marriage took work. He never hit me, so I spent years trying to explain why I felt afraid in a house where no one had raised a fist. Ryan's control was quieter than that. He emptied my gas tank if he did not want me going somewhere. He moved my car keys and then helped me find them. He told our friends I was anxious, then smiled when I acted anxious because I knew he had already given them the script. He read my messages and called it transparency. He showed up outside my office at lunch and called it devotion. The last winter we lived together, I started keeping a tote bag in the trunk of my coworker Alina's car. 2 sweaters, copies of my documents, a prepaid phone, and $300 in cash. Alina was a senior paralegal at the family law firm where I worked. She had silver hair cut to her jaw and a way of asking questions that made excuses fall apart. One Thursday evening, after Ryan locked my laptop in his safe because I had refused to leave a client dinner early, Alina drove me to her guest room. The next morning, I filed for separation. 3 months later, I filed for divorce. My mother cried harder than I did. Not because I was hurt, because I was leaving. She sat at my kitchen table while half my dishes were still in boxes and said, "Natalie, men like Ryan do not grow on trees." I said. Good. She blinked like I had slapped her. He wants to fix this. I do not want to be fixed by the person who broke me. She folded a paper napkin into a small square and looked toward the window. You are 34. Starting over is not romantic at this age. I remember that sentence because it was the first time I realized my mother was not confused. She understood I was unhappy. She just thought a polished husband was worth more than an unfrightened daughter. The divorce took 11 months. Ryan fought over furniture he did not want and a savings account he barely used. He demanded mediation, then arrived with a 3-page list of my failures. He offered to stop contesting the condo if I agreed to one counseling session with him. I refused. The judge signed the final order in early spring. I walked out of the courthouse with Alina beside me and a headache that felt like weather leaving my skull. That afternoon, I changed my name back at the bank, changed my locks, and changed my emergency contacts. The medical directive came 1 week later. Alina drafted it because she had seen too many people assume family meant safe. I named Alina as my healthcare agent. I named my cousin Tessa as backup. I specifically excluded Ryan. I put copies in 3 places. One went to my doctor. One went in a fire safe under my bed. One went to my mother because she was still my emergency contact for work, and because a part of me still wanted to believe she would choose me when choosing mattered. I drove to her house with the red folder on a Saturday morning. She had coffee ready and lemon bread cooling on the counter. I told her what was inside. I told her I needed her to keep it somewhere easy to find. I told her that if anything ever happened, she had to call Alina first. Not Ryan, never Ryan. My mother touched the folder with 2 fingers as if it were damp. Do you really need to make this so harsh? It is not harsh, it is clear. He was your husband. He is not anymore. She looked at the front page. I watched her eyes move over the bold sentence. Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. Her mouth tightened. Then she smiled the little schoolteacher smile she used when a parent complained. Of course, honey, I understand. I wanted that to be true so badly that I believed it. For the next year, my life got smaller in the best way. I bought a blue sofa Ryan would have hated. I learned to sleep in the center of the bed. I took long walks without announcing where I was going. I adopted a gray cat named Murphy who treated every visitor like a legal threat. I rebuilt my days around ordinary freedom. My mother kept inviting Ryan to things by accident. At least that was what she called it. He stopped by her Christmas open house because she forgot to remove him from the text list. He appeared at my father's birthday lunch because she thought I would not come. He mailed me a box of my old cookbooks through her address, and she called to say he had looked tired. Every time I objected, she acted wounded. I am not choosing him over you, Natalie. I am trying not to hate a man who was part of our family. He made me afraid in my own home. You both made mistakes. That was her favorite bridge. You both made mistakes. It allowed her to walk over the part where one person controlled and the other person survived. My father said less. He had a habit of looking down when my mother reached the edge of a truth. Once, while she was in the backyard cutting hydrangeas, he stood beside me at the sink and said, "Your mother just wants peace." I said, "Peace for who?" He rinsed his glass for a long time and did not answer. By the second summer after the divorce, I had stopped arguing. I stopped going to family dinners if Ryan was mentioned. I stopped explaining why surprise contact was not kindness. I stopped hoping my mother would use the word abuse. She would not. That word would have made her complicit for doubting me, and my mother would confess to almost anything before she confessed to being wrong. Then came the Thursday in October. It had rained all morning, a steady cold rain that turned the leaves flat against the road. I left the office around 6 with a box of deposition files in my back seat and a headache behind my left eye. Alina called as I was pulling out of the garage. I let it go to voicemail because the traffic on Haskins Road was always ugly after rain. The last thing I remember before the crash was the green light turning yellow and the sound of tires sliding where they should have held. A delivery truck ran the red. My car spun sideways. The driver's side hit a light pole hard enough to fold the door into my hip. I remember the smell of antifreeze. I remember rain on my face because the window was gone. I remember someone saying, "Ma'am, stay with me." Then I remember nothing for almost 3 days. What I know about those days came from records, nurses, and phone logs. The hospital called my emergency contact at 6:48 that evening. That was my mother. She arrived at 7:21. At 7:34, before anyone called Alina, my mother called Ryan. At 8:10, Ryan walked into Glenhaven Regional Hospital and told the nurse at the desk, "I am her husband." He did not say X. My mother did not correct him. That sentence opened the door. He was given a visitor badge. He was allowed to sit with my chart. He was asked questions about my medication, my allergies, my anxiety, my wishes. He answered like a man who had waited 2 years for the room to need him again. When Alina arrived at 9 after hearing about the accident from my office manager, she brought the copy of my directive from our firm's safe. The nurse told her family was already present. Alina said, "I am the named healthcare agent." The nurse asked for paperwork. Alina reached into her bag. That was when my mother stepped into the hallway and told Alina this was not the time to create conflict. "I have her documents," Alina said. My mother said, "Ryan has it handled." Ryan has no authority. He knows her better than anyone. That sentence was in Alina's notes later, written in black ink with the time beside it. He knows her better than anyone. My mother said that about the man I had spent years escaping. Alina insisted. The hospital took the directive, scanned it, and placed it in the file at 9:46. But by then Ryan had already been treated as the center. He had already authorized information release to his email. He had already told the orthopedic surgeon that I would recover better at his townhouse because he worked from home. He had already told my mother she should go home and rest because he would stay overnight. Alina called hospital administration twice that night. She was told the team would review the documents. Nobody wanted a hallway fight while I was unconscious and being prepared for surgery. So Ryan stayed. He sat beside me through the first night. He answered my phone when Alina called. He texted my boss from my phone and wrote, "This is Ryan. Natalie will be unavailable." He told my neighbor to leave Murphy's food outside my door because he had a key, which he did not. He asked my mother for my spare key. She gave it to him. I know that because my doorbell camera recorded her standing on my porch the next morning, taking the key from the turtle-shaped lockbox under the railing and placing it in his hand. She would later say she thought he needed clothes for me. When I woke up, my throat felt scraped raw and my left side felt like it belonged to someone else. I opened my eyes to a white ceiling, a beep, and Ryan Pierce whispering my name like we were in a movie where he had earned the right to be there. "Hey, Nat." No one called me Nat anymore. He reached for my hand. I pulled away so fast pain flashed across my ribs. He looked hurt. That old practiced hurt. The kind that asked other people to comfort him for what he had done. My mother moved from the corner. "Sweetheart, do not get upset. Ryan has been making the decisions." I tried to speak. Nothing came out but air. Ryan leaned closer. "You're safe. I have been here the whole time." That was exactly the problem. A nurse came in and smiled too brightly. "Good morning, Natalie. You gave everyone quite a scare." I pointed at Ryan with my good hand and shook my head. The nurse looked between us. My mother said, "She is confused." I shook my head harder. The pain climbed my spine. Ryan said, "She gets anxious around hospitals." He spoke like he had ownership over my fear. Alina arrived 20 minutes later, wearing yesterday's suit and a face I had only seen in court. She moved straight to my bedside and said, "Natalie, blink once if you want Ryan removed from the room." I blinked. Once. No hesitation. My mother made a sound like I had embarrassed her at church. Ryan stood slowly. She is under medication. Elena did not look at him. Natalie, blink once if you understand me. I blinked again. Elena turned to the nurse. Please remove Mr. Pierce and update the visitor list according to the directive that was scanned last night. The nurse's face changed. Not anger, recognition. The kind people get when paperwork stops being background and starts being evidence. Ryan stepped into the hallway, but he did not go quietly. I saved your life, he said. My throat burned. I could not answer. Elena answered for the room, but not for me. You were never authorized to stand in it. My mother followed him out and left me with Elena. That hurt more than I wanted it to. Elena sat down and took my fingers carefully, avoiding the IV tape. You are safe now, she said. I wanted to believe her. But then she told me what had happened. She told me about the call logs. She told me the hospital had received the directive late because my mother refused to produce the red folder. She told me Ryan had entered my condo with my mother's help. She told me he had removed a framed photo from my bedroom and placed it face down on my dresser. Not the surgery, not the cast, not even the visitor badge. The photo was of me and Elena and Tessa at my divorce dinner, laughing in front of a cake that said free at last in blue icing. Ryan had turned it down in my own room while I was unconscious. He had walked through the life I built after him and made one tiny correction. My mother gave him the key. I cried without sound because my throat was too raw. Elena held a cup with a straw to my lips. For 3 days, I answered questions by blinking or writing with my right hand on a yellow legal pad. The first sentence I wrote was not about pain. It was, "Where is the red folder?" Elena looked at my mother, who had returned with a cardigan over her arm and guilt arranged into a patient smile. My mother said, "I have it at home." I wrote, "Why did you not bring it?" She looked at Elena, then she looked at my bandaged hand. It all happened so fast. I wrote, "Why, Ryan?" Her lips trembled. "I thought you would want someone who loved you." I stared at her until she looked away. Elena took the pen from my fingers before I snapped it. The hospital discharged me 6 days after the accident. I had a broken wrist, 2 cracked ribs, a concussion, and a bruised hip that turned every color of bad fruit. Elena drove me home. My mother wanted me to recover at her house. Ryan had offered his guest room. I laughed when Elena told me that, which hurt enough to make me stop. At my condo, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Ryan's cologne. Faint, expensive, and wrong. He had been in my bedroom. He had opened my closet. He had folded 3 sweaters into a duffel bag and set it on the bed. He had moved Murphy's food bowl from the kitchen to the laundry room because, according to a note on my counter, cats should not roam where a recovering patient might trip. He had written patient like a role he could assign me. Elena changed the locks before sunset. Tessa stayed the first week. She made soup, handled my medication schedule, and sat on the bathroom floor while I cried because I could not wash my hair without help. My mother came by on the second day with a casserole and the red folder. She placed both on the counter like they weighed the same. The folder looked untouched. The front page was still there. Bold, clear. Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. My mother saw me looking at it. "I know you are angry," I said. "That is not the word." My voice still sounded like gravel. She tucked her purse strap higher on her shoulder. "I made a judgment call." "No, you made a choice. In a crisis, mothers do what they think is best. You called my ex-husband before you called my legal health care agent. He was your husband for 6 years. He controlled me for 6 years." She flinched, but not enough. He was calm. Elena was aggressive. Elena had the legal document. "You were unconscious, Natalie. Somebody had to take charge." I put my good hand on the red folder. I already had. For a second, my mother looked tired instead of defensive. Then the wall came back up. "I am sorry you feel betrayed." That sentence has dressed itself as an apology for generations. I told her to leave. She stared at me. "You cannot mean that." "I do." "You are hurt and medicated." I am hurt because of the crash. I am saying this because of you. Tessa opened the door. My mother looked at her like she was staff. Then she left the casserole and took her wounded dignity with her. I threw the casserole away. I could not swallow food from a woman who had watched a nurse call my ex-husband my husband and decided correction was less important than hope. The first 2 weeks of recovery were slow and humiliating. I needed help getting out of bed. I dropped pills because my left hand was useless. I fell asleep in the middle of conversations. Every time the phone buzzed, my body tightened before my brain could read the screen. Ryan called from blocked numbers. He left voicemails that sounded generous if you did not know the language underneath. Nat, I know this is overwhelming. I can help with the insurance forms. Your mother is worried. Do not punish her because you are scared. We made medical decisions together for years. I was not some stranger. He mailed a bouquet to my condo with a card that said, "Still here." I took a picture, threw the flowers in the dumpster, and gave the card to Alina. My mother texted every morning, not apologies. Updates on her feelings. I have not slept. Your father is beside himself. Ryan is devastated. People at church are asking how you are. Please do not make this ugly. Please do not turn one mistake into a wall. The word mistake kept appearing like a stain she thought repetition could bleach. A mistake is grabbing skim milk instead of whole. A mistake is forgetting an umbrella. Calling the man your daughter legally excluded, then standing aside while he used the word husband, is not a mistake. It is an allegiance. On the 17th day after discharge, I called Glenhaven Regional Hospital and requested my full patient record. I also requested the access log for my chart, the visitor list, the scan directive history, and the contact notes from the night I was admitted. The records clerk sounded surprised. I knew the tone. People expected injured women to be grateful, not thorough. I was a paralegal. Thorough was my native language. While I waited for the records, Alina helped me build a timeline. We used a yellow legal pad, then a spreadsheet, then a binder. Not red. I could not use red anymore. This binder was white with clear sleeves and tab dividers. Tab 1, directive. Tab 2, hospital. Tab 3, Ryan. Tab 4, Margot. I hated seeing my mother's name written like a case heading. But that was what she had become, not because I stopped loving her. Because love without boundaries is just access. The records arrived in pieces. The first envelope came from the hospital's legal department. It showed that my directive was scanned at 9:46 the night of the accident. It showed Ryan had been added as a visitor before that. It showed my mother had identified him as husband, not former husband. Husband. The word appeared in a nurse's contact note, plain as a signature. Mother states husband Ryan Pierce is primary support. I read that sentence until it blurred. My mother had not merely failed to correct a misunderstanding. She had created one. The second set of records showed that Ryan's email had been added for care updates during the first night. The third showed that he had signed a belongings receipt when staff gave him my purse, my phone, my house keys, and my glasses. My glasses. That detail made me furious in a way I could barely explain. I could understand panic around surgery. I could understand confusion in a crowded emergency room. I could not understand a nurse placing my glasses, the thing I needed to see the world, into my ex-husband's hands while my mother stood close enough to stop it. Then the doorbell video gave us the missing piece. My porch camera stored clips for 30 days. Alina recovered the clip from the morning after the crash. There was my mother in her tan raincoat, standing under my porch light. There was Ryan beside her, hands in his pockets, looking too comfortable at my door. My mother opened the turtle lockbox. She took out the spare key. Ryan said something the camera did not catch. My mother shook her head, then she handed him the key anyway. He put it in his pocket. She wiped her eyes. He hugged her. I watched the clip 3 times. On the 4th, I noticed what was in my mother's other hand, the red folder. She had brought it to my condo, not to the hospital, to my condo. She had the directive with her that morning. She could have taken it to Glenhaven Regional. She could have handed it to a nurse. Instead, she handed my key to Ryan while the paper that excluded him sat against her coat. That was the moment the story changed inside me. Before that clip, a small, injured part of me still wanted confusion. I wanted panic. I wanted a messy emergency with frightened people and imperfect choices. The clip took that mercy away. My mother had the truth in one hand and gave Ryan the key with the other. Tessa watched it once and said, "Nat, you need a lawyer." "I have Alina." "You need Alina as your friend and another lawyer as your wall." She was right. Alina referred me to a patient rights attorney named Miriam Cole. Miriam was small, calm, and terrifying in the way of people who read every line before they speak. She came to my condo with a rolling briefcase and a thermos of tea. Miriam reviewed the directive, the hospital notes, the access logs, the voicemails, and the doorbell clip. She made check marks on a legal pad and asked precise questions. "Did Ryan ever have current written authority?" "No." "Did your mother possess the red folder before the accident?" "Yes." "Did she know Alina was the named agent?" "Yes." "Did she represent Ryan as your husband?" "The record says she did." Miriam looked up. "Then we have 3 tracks." She held up one finger. "Hospital complaint and correction of records." Second finger. "Written notice to Ryan that he has no authority, no access, and no permission to contact you." Third finger. "Emergency contact and medical directive update, with copies sent to every provider." I asked if my mother could get in legal trouble. Miriam's face did not change. "Maybe, maybe not, but this does not have to be about punishment. It can be about making sure she never gets the chance to do it again." That was the first sentence that made me breathe fully. Not punishment. Prevention. I did not want a courtroom. I wanted my own life sealed from the people who treated my unconscious body like a family project. Miriam sent the first letters that week. Ryan received a cease and desist by certified mail. The hospital received a formal complaint and a demand to correct every record that identified him as my husband. My doctors received updated directives naming Alina and Tessa. My work file changed. My condo lockbox disappeared. My mother lost emergency contact status everywhere a form could remove her. The acts were practical. The grief was not. Every form felt like crossing out a version of my mother I had needed. Emergency contact, next of kin, person to notify. There are so many quiet places where a name means trust. I had to erase hers from all of them. She noticed by the end of the week. Her first call went to voicemail. Her second went to voicemail. Then she sent a text with no punctuation, which meant she was either furious or performing heartbreak. "Natalie, please tell me you did not remove me from your doctor and your work emergency forms." I typed 3 replies and deleted them. The fourth was only 5 words. I did what was necessary. She called my father. My father called me. He sounded older than he had in the hospital waiting room. "Your mother is crying." "I believe you." "She says you are treating her like a criminal." "I am treating her like someone who cannot be trusted with access." A long pause. "She thought Ryan would keep you calm." "Ryan made me need the directive." "I know." That stopped me. My father had never said anything that close to agreement. He breathed into the phone. "I know more than I said." "Then why did you say so little?" He did not answer right away. In the background, I heard my mother ask who he was talking to. He lowered his voice. "Because your mother fills the room." That sentence made me sadder than a defense would have. My father was not innocent. He was a grown man who had watched the room fill and decided to live in the corners. "I cannot make room for both of you anymore," I said. "I know. You need to decide whether you are calling as her messenger or my father." He whispered, "I am trying." But trying had always been his safest word. My mother escalated after that, not loudly. Margot Reed did not scream unless all the windows were closed. She escalated socially. She told my aunt that I had banned her from my medical information because Alina was manipulating me. She told her church prayer group that my concussion had made me paranoid. She told a neighbor that Ryan had slept in a hospital chair for 3 nights and I repaid him with a legal threat. I know because Glen Haven is the kind of town where gossip arrives wrapped as concern. People sent messages. Some were careful, some were not. Honey, your mother was terrified. Ryan really stepped up. Forgiveness is for you, not them. Do not let lawyers break a family. I started screenshotting every message. Not because I wanted a pile of anger, because memory gets tired, evidence does not. Ryan, meanwhile, changed tactics. His voicemails became wounded, then spiritual, then practical. We have both grown. Your mom saw what I have been saying for years. We belong in each other's crises. I still know your insurance better than Alina does. That last one made Alina snort so hard she spilled coffee on the binder. I added the voicemail transcript behind tab 3. Then came the photograph. My mother posted it on Facebook 3 weeks after the accident. It was an old picture from my wedding reception. Ryan and me under string lights, his hand on the small of my back, my smile wide and unaware. The caption read, praying for healing, humility, and restored hearts. She did not use my name, but everybody knew. Within an hour, there were comments. God can mend any marriage. Such a beautiful couple. A mother's heart knows. I sat on my blue sofa with Murphy pressed against my thigh and stared at the screen until my cast ached. That post did what the hospital room had done. It put me back beside Ryan in public and called it care. I called Miriam. She listened, then said, "Do you want it removed or do you want it documented?" Both. We documented it first. Then I sent my mother one message. Take down the photograph of me and Ryan. You do not have permission to use my image to suggest reconciliation. She replied 11 minutes later. It is only a prayer. I answered. It is a lie with comments. She took it down, but not before saving her pride in a final comment. Some people reject love when they need it most. I printed that too. The binder got heavier. So did I not physically? Inside, there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from having to prove the obvious. That your ex-husband is not your husband. That no means no even when spoken before the emergency. That a mother can do harm with a soft voice and a casserole dish. At physical therapy, I learned how to grip a foam ball. At home, I learned how to answer only messages that deserved oxygen. By late November, I could button my own shirt. I could drive short distances. I could sleep 4 hours without dreaming of Ryan beside my hospital bed. Then Miriam called with the hospital's response. Glen Haven Regional had completed a preliminary review. They admitted the records contained inconsistent relationship information. They corrected Ryan's status to former spouse. They removed his email from all systems. They scheduled a patient relations meeting and invited me to attend. Miriam said I did not have to go. They can complete the review without you. Will my mother be there? She has asked to attend. Of course she had. Margot Reed believed every room improved when she could explain herself in it. Ryan, he has asked to attend as well. The hospital has not granted him access to your medical discussion without your permission. I laughed once. It came out cold. He wants permission to discuss why he had permission. That is one way to phrase it. I agreed to the meeting on 3 conditions. Ryan could attend only for the portion about his own access. My mother could not speak for me. Alina would be present as my healthcare agent and support person. Miriam would attend as counsel. The meeting was set for the 2nd Tuesday in December. My mother called the next morning from my father's phone because I had stopped answering hers. I picked up because I thought it was him. "Please do not hang up," she said. My hand tightened around the phone. "You used Dad's number. I knew you would not answer mine. That should have told you something." She inhaled shakily. "I want to come over before the meeting." "No, Natalie, I need to look at my daughter. I need to know you are still in there." The sentence was so theatrical I almost laughed. "I am in here. That is the problem for you. You have become hard." I became clear. Alina and that lawyer are feeding this. No, you fed this when you called Ryan. He was family. He was my ex-husband. He loved you. He controlled me. You never let me see that. I told you. You told me pieces. I gave you the red folder. Silence. There it was, the object she could not soften. The red folder had no tone for her to criticize, no memory to dispute, no attitude, just a sentence in bold. She began to cry. I was scared. So was I, and I was unconscious. I thought if he was there, maybe when you woke up, you would see that he still cared. That was the first honest thing she had said. It was not an apology. It was worse. It was motive. I sat very still. You used my accident as a second chance for him. No, Natalie. Yes, I wanted you loved. I wanted my directive followed. He would have done anything for you. He did. He took my phone, my keys, my chart, and my room. She whispered, I cannot lose you over this. You already risked losing me while I could not speak. I hung up before she could make me comfort her. After that call, the story became simple. My mother did not misunderstand my boundary. She disagreed with it. The hospital room had given her an opening, and she took it. The next week moved slowly. I practiced walking without holding my ribs. I practiced saying the sentence Miriam told me I would need. I do not consent to Ryan Pierce receiving, discussing, or retaining any medical information about me. At first, I could say it calmly. Then I would picture him beside my bed and my voice would shake. Alina made me repeat it while folding laundry, while feeding Murphy, while waiting for tea to steep. Again, she would say. I do not consent to Ryan Pierce receiving, discussing, or retaining any medical information about me. Again, I do not consent. Good, shorter if needed. No, she smiled. That is also a complete legal strategy. The night before the meeting, my father came by alone. He brought the red scarf I had left at their house the previous winter. It was folded in a grocery bag like contraband. He stood outside my door until I told him he could come in. He looked around my condo the way people look at a place after damage, searching for what still stands. I did not know she had the folder that morning, he said. Okay. I knew she called Ryan. Okay. I told her Alina should be called. But you did not call Alina, he nodded, eyes on the floor. No. Why? Because she said you would hate us if we shut Ryan out and he turned out to be what you needed. I waited. He rubbed his thumb over the grocery bag handle, and because I was a coward. It was not enough, but it was true, and truth has a different weight than excuses. I asked, Are you coming tomorrow? Your mother wants me there. That is not what I asked. He looked at me then. No, I think I should not sit in another room where she tries to speak over you. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you, he nodded once. At the door, he stopped. She has a paper she wants you to sign. I went cold. What paper? She called it a family statement. I stared at him. He looked ashamed. She wrote that Ryan acted in good faith with your mother's consent and that you want everyone to move forward privately. There it was, not forgiveness, erasure. Did you read it? Yes. Did you sign it? No. That was the first brave thing I could remember him doing in years. After he left, I called Miriam. She was quiet while I explained. Then she said, Bring your own pen. The patient relations meeting took place in a beige conference room on the 3rd floor of Glenhaven Regional. Alina drove me. Miriam met us in the lobby. I wore black pants, flat shoes, and a loose navy sweater that did not rub my ribs. My cast had been replaced by a removable brace. I kept my left hand visible on the table because I wanted my mother to look at one consequence of her emergency. The hospital sent 2 people. A patient advocate named Joanne and a privacy officer named Mr. Bell. Joanne had kind eyes and a folder full of printed policies. Mr. Bell had a laptop, a thin mouth, and the haunted look of a man who knew the word lawsuit could enter any sentence. My mother arrived in a cream coat with her hair set, carrying a leather portfolio. Ryan arrived 3 minutes after her. He wore a charcoal overcoat and the same concerned expression he used in mediation. For one wild second, my body believed we were back in court, and I needed to be ready for him to describe my feelings better than I could. Then Alina's knee touched mine under the table. I breathed. Ryan looked at my brace. "Nat, you look better." I said nothing. My mother said, "Natalie, please." Miriam spoke before I did. "All comments should go through the advocate until my client chooses otherwise." My client? Those two words steadied the room. Joanne began with a summary. She explained that the hospital had corrected Ryan's relationship status. She said they were reviewing how visitor authority was granted before the directive was scanned. She said they wanted to hear from me about the impact. My mother opened her portfolio. Miriam held up one hand. "Mrs. Reed is not here to make a statement before Natalie." My mother's face flushed. "I am her mother." Miriam looked at Joanne. "That is precisely the issue." Joanne turned to me. "Natalie, you can speak in whatever way feels comfortable." I had planned to read from notes. But when the moment came, I looked at my mother, then at Ryan, and the notes felt too small. "I woke up from a car accident and found my ex-husband in my hospital room," I said. "My directive excluding him had existed for almost 2 years. My mother had a copy. She knew where it was and what it said." Ryan shifted. I kept going. "He had my phone, my keys, my medical updates, and access to my home. Staff referred to him as my husband. My mother did not correct that. She supported it." My mother's eyes filled. I was terrified. I looked at her. "So was I," she flinched. I turned back to Joanne. "The impact is simple. The system trusted the wrong person because the person I trusted lied by omission and then by action." Ryan leaned forward. "That is not fair," Miriam said. "Mr. Pierce will have a chance to address his own conduct." Ryan ignored her. "I was called in the middle of the night and told you might die." "No," I said. The room went still. It was the first word I had spoken directly to him. "No what?" "No, you do not get to start with fear and skip authority." His mouth tightened. "I was your husband. You were my ex-husband. For 6 years, I was the person who knew what you wanted in a crisis." I felt the old pull. The trained instinct to defend, explain, soften, make the room see me, but the room already had the papers. "I wrote what I wanted," I said. "You read what you wanted." My mother whispered, "Natalie." I turned to her. She took the leather portfolio into both hands. "This is exactly why I wanted us to talk first. You are hurt, and you are letting hurt turn everyone into villains." She slid a sheet of paper across the table. Miriam did not touch it. Neither did I. My mother pushed it closer. "It is only a statement. It says we all acted out of love and confusion, and that we want to resolve this privately as a family." Alina's face went still. Ryan looked at the paper with satisfaction he could not hide. There was his real reason for attending, not remorse. A record. I read the first line upside down. "On the night of Natalie Reed's accident, her family made good faith decisions based on her best interest." My ribs hurt with the breath I took. My mother said softly, "Please, do not destroy people who came when you needed them." I looked at Ryan, then I looked at her. "You did not come when I needed you. You replaced what I had already said." She shook her head. "I am your mother. I had the right to choose who stood for you." There it was, the whole story in one sentence. Not panic, not confusion. Right. My mother believed motherhood gave her a master key to my body, my history, my fear, and my no. I opened my bag with my good hand and took out the red folder. The room seemed to shrink around it. My mother's eyes dropped to it and stayed there. I placed it on the table between us. "You had this." She said nothing. I opened the folder to the first page and turned it toward her. "Read the bold line." Her lips parted. "Natalie, do not do this. Read it." Joanne looked at the page. Mr. Bell stopped typing. Ryan stared at the wall. My mother whispered, "Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf." "Again," I said. Her face changed. "Natalie." "Again." She looked around the room, searching for someone to rescue her from the sentence she had ignored. No one moved. She read it again, louder this time. Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. I nodded. That sentence was written before the accident. It was in the folder I gave you. It was on the page you held on my porch when you handed Ryan my spare key. Ryan said, "This is vindictive." I turned to him. Number vindictive would be pretending I have authority over you because I miss who I was allowed to be when you were helpless. He went pale with anger. My voice shook, but it held. You did not save me. You used a medical emergency to step back into a life that had legally and personally removed you. My mother began to cry. I thought you would forgive him if you saw he stayed. That confession landed with a force that made even Ryan look at her. I stared at her. You thought my unconscious body was your chance to change my mind. No, I thought love might soften you. I put my palm flat on the red folder. You did not make a mistake. You handed my body back to the man I escaped. The room went silent. Not dramatic silent, administrative silent, the kind where everyone knows the sentence will be remembered in the notes. My mother covered her mouth. Ryan stood. I do not have to sit here and be slandered. Miriam said, "You are free to leave." He looked at Joanne. I acted in good faith, I said. Then you will not mind a record showing you had no authority. He looked at me, and for 1 second the polished man was gone. There he was, the man who used to move my keys and smile while I searched. You always did know how to make yourself the victim. My fear rose fast, hot and old. Then Alina reached into the white binder and slid one page to me. It was the cease and desist confirmation. Signed, delivered, documented. I did not need her to speak. I lifted the page. And you always did mistake access for love. Joanne asked Ryan to step into the hallway. He refused. Mr. Bell stood and opened the conference room door. Ryan looked at my mother. She did not look back. That was new, maybe shame. Maybe self-preservation. It did not matter. Ryan left. The door closed behind him. I thought I would feel triumph. I felt air. Joanne asked if I wanted to continue. I said yes. My mother reached for the statement. I picked it up first. I read the last line. Natalie Reed agrees that no further action is necessary and requests privacy for her family. I tore the paper once down the middle. My mother gasped like I had torn skin. Then I tore it again. No further action is necessary, I said, because I have already taken it. Miriam handed Joanne a packet. It included the updated directive, the corrected emergency contacts, the formal request to restrict Ryan from any past or future records, the doorbell still, the hospital note where my mother identified him as husband, and my written impact statement. I signed the final page with the pen I had brought from home. Black ink, steady hand, the action was small. A signature, not a speech. But it changed the room. It made the truth official in a way tears could not. My mother stared at the pieces of her statement on the table. You would rather humiliate me than forgive me. No, I said, I would rather be protected than managed. You are my daughter. I am also an adult with rights you do not outrank. She pressed a tissue under her eye. I was trying to bring your family back together. You brought my abuser to my bedside. She recoiled from the word. Finally, there it was. The word she had spent years refusing to hold. Abuser. She shook her head. I cannot accept that. You do not have to accept it to lose access. Joanne wrote something down. Mr. Bell confirmed the hospital would maintain the corrected record, restrict Ryan's access, and document my complaint as unresolved pending final review. He did not declare me right. He did not need to. The consequence was visible. Ryan was no longer in the system as husband. My mother was no longer an emergency contact. The red folder had become what it was always meant to be, a boundary with staples. When the meeting ended, my mother waited by the elevators. Miriam and Alina stood a few feet behind me, close enough for safety, far enough for choice. My mother looked smaller than she had at the table. Without the portfolio, without the statement, without Ryan in the room, she was just a woman in a cream coat holding used tissues. "I am sorry," she said. I had imagined those words for years. I thought they would open something. They did not. Maybe because they came after proof. Maybe because she said them like a password she had finally agreed to try. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. Her eyes filled again. "For the hospital." "Be specific." She closed her eyes. "For calling Ryan. And for not giving them the folder. And for letting him be there when you woke up. And," her mouth trembled, "for thinking I knew better than you." That was the first apology with a root. I let it stand. I did not hug her. I did not comfort her. I said, "I believe you are sorry that it cost you." She flinched. "I am sorry I hurt you." "I hope that is true someday." The elevator opened. I stepped inside with Alina and Miriam. My mother did not follow. For the first time in my life, a door closed while she stayed on the other side, and I did not press the button to reopen it. The final hospital letter arrived in January. Glenhaven Regional acknowledged that staff failed to verify authority quickly enough after receiving conflicting family information. They confirmed Ryan's access had been removed. They confirmed my corrected directive would be flagged in my chart. They offered a formal apology and outlined new training around former spouses and healthcare agents. It was not everything. It was enough. Ryan sent one more letter through his attorney, denying wrongdoing and requesting that I stop characterizing his conduct as abusive. Miriam answered with 6 pages and a copy of the cease and desist. I never heard from him again. My mother did not disappear. People like Margot do not vanish dramatically. They test door handles. She sent a birthday card in February. No sermon, no photograph, just a card with violets on the front and 3 sentences inside. "I am sorry I believed my hope mattered more than your boundary. I am in counseling. I will wait until you choose contact." I read it twice. Then I put it in the white binder, not as evidence against her, as evidence that she had finally written something true. My father came by every other Sunday with groceries I did not ask for and no messages from my mother. At first, he hovered. Then he learned to sit. One afternoon, while I was sorting medical bills, he said, "I should have protected you when you first left him." "Yes," I said. He nodded. "I am sorry." "What are you sorry for?" He looked at me for a long moment. "For letting your mother call fear peace. For letting Ryan call control love. For being relieved when you survived instead of angry about what happened while you could not speak." I put down the bill. That apology had a root too. We did not become magically close. Real repair is less cinematic than people want. It is awkward. It repeats. It pays attention to small choices. He stopped saying your mother when he meant you should call her. He started asking whether he could come by instead of announcing. He learned Murphy's feeding routine and never touched my lockbox because there was no lockbox anymore. Elena remained my healthcare agent. Tessa remained backup. The red folder was replaced with a new blue one because I never wanted to see that shade of red in an emergency again. The first page still had one bold sentence, but now there were several. Margot Reed is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. Ryan Pierce is not authorized to receive medical information or make decisions on my behalf. Any claim of family reconciliation must be disregarded unless confirmed directly by me while conscious and competent. That last line was Miriam's addition. She said law liked plain sentences. So did I by spring. My wrist had healed with a faint ache before rain. My ribs stopped complaining when I laughed. I went back to work part-time, then full-time. The first day I walked into the office, Elena had put a small cake in the break room. It said "still here" in blue icing. I stared at it. She looked suddenly worried. Too much. I shook my head. No, that phrase needed a new owner. We ate cake with plastic forks over case files. I cried once in the bathroom, not because I was sad, but because the life I had built after Ryan was still there. Bruised, interrupted, not gone. In May, my mother asked my father to pass along a request. She wanted to meet for coffee with her counselor present. He told her to send it herself if she was willing to hear no. She did. One text. No pressure. My counselor says repair starts with asking, not arranging. Would you consider one session with me if and when you are ready? I did not answer for 9 days. On the 10th, I wrote back, I am not ready. I received the request. She replied, thank you for telling me. No guilt, no scripture, no sentence about my father's heart. I put that screenshot in the binder too. Again, not as evidence against her, as evidence of a different choice. Maybe one day there will be a coffee shop. Maybe one day there will be a counselor's office and a conversation where my mother listens more than she explains. Maybe not. Forgiveness, when people demand it, is usually just a request for access without repair. I am not interested in that kind. The people who tell you forgiveness is for you are sometimes right, but they rarely mention that boundaries are for you too. A locked door can be holy. A changed emergency contact can be a prayer. A folder can be a fence. The last time I saw Ryan was not in person. It was through the glass door of a downtown restaurant 2 months after the hospital meeting. I was walking to lunch with Alina when I saw him at the bar, leaning toward a woman in a green coat. He was smiling gently, listening hard, nodding as if her words had weight. For a second, my stomach dropped, then I kept walking. Alina saw him too. You okay? I looked at my reflection in the restaurant glass. Shorter hair, faint scar near my temple, left wrist wrapped in a soft brace because rain was coming. Yes, I said, and I meant it. Not because he had no power in the world. Men like Ryan always find rooms. I was okay because he no longer had a key to mine. That night, I opened the white binder and read the timeline one more time, not to punish myself, to remember accurately. The crash, the call. The badge, the word husband in a hospital note, the red folder on my porch, the key in Ryan's hand, the conference room, my mother's sentence. I had the right to choose who stood for you. My answer. You handed my body back to the man I escaped. Some truths are painful because they close doors. Others are painful because they reveal the door was never locked from the inside. My mother had always believed she could enter my life if she brought enough concern with her. Ryan had believed the same thing with charm. The accident did not create that belief. It exposed it. Now the lock was changed, not just on my condo, on my records, on my phone, on my body, on the part of me that used to mistake being understood for being overruled. I am telling you this because emergencies reveal more than injuries. They reveal who believes your no still counts when you cannot say it out loud. They reveal who reads the paper and who looks for a way around it. They reveal the difference between love and possession. My mother wanted a reconciliation story. Ryan wanted a rescue story. For a few days, while I was unconscious, they almost wrote one over me. But I woke up. I found the red folder. I followed the paper trail. And when they asked me to sign away the truth for the sake of family, I brought my own pen.